All right, well, here we go. The big conclusion to this Halloween. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's proof that I'm a little bit sick. So if I do that again where I don't know what that was, I was like swallowing my whole tongue there for a second, which is impossible too because I'm tongue-tied. That's just a fun fact. Yeah, we are concluding. This is evil. Doesn't want me to speak right now. We are concluding this 5-week series, Wicked. I think it's the longest series that we've done so far. So if you've been sick of that intro video, it's done. That was the last time that you see it. We're about to begin a new series called Full On Thanks. I think we've got a slide for that. And it's perfect for our Thanksgiving mealtime. And it's just going to be, man, such a contrast from this series that we just came out of, this Wicked, and then we've got this one that just looks delicious and delightful, and it is. It's going to be such a good series about thankfulness and generosity and how we're supposed to be as people aligned with Jesus. So, in the beginning, we've talked about Genesis, the Genesis account before. God creates, and He does something with you, and He does something with me that He does not do with the rest of creation. It's very unique. He breathes into us. The Hebrew word there is neshama. I should have it up here. And it basically just means wind or breath, or it's basically how we started to get the idea of the Spirit. There's another word, ruach, in the Hebrew. You got to get the phlegm out right there. And it means the same thing, essentially. This wind, this breath, this power that is around us and in humankind within us that sets us apart from everything else in creation. In the Greek, the word is pneuma, which I love. That's probably my favorite one. The point is this, that there's a million things that exist, but we are different. We are set apart, which is what God would call holy. And we are imbued with something that is wildly supernatural. And that's what this whole series, Wicked, has been about. That there is something going on. There's something that is different with us. And there's something different outside of this physical world that we see here that is affecting whatever is different within us. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, that breath, that spirit, that whatever it is. Think about how we breathe, right? I don't know about you. I have asthma, so I never breathe well. If anybody else, shout out to asthma people. If we try to hold our breath, I really appreciate that. Someone did raise their hand. Dot, I appreciate you. Asthma. If we hold our breath, it does not work out very well. I don't know what happens. I guess people explode. I've never held my breath that long. Same thing goes for if all we're doing is breathing out. Breathing has this system, this rhythm to it that we have to abide by. And as soon as we are born, we all immediately recognize this, right? Like when my son was born, I mean, that was one of the scariest things. I wasn't planning on saying this. He did this thing where he had his first, I don't know why I want to bring this up. He had his first bowel movement in utero. So the first thing when I see my son is he's going to gasp for air and look at me and we'll, lock eyes and we'll be like, this is the greatest thing ever. Instead, they take out this baby, and he's kind of really funny looking, first off. I wasn't expecting how funny he'd look. And then they immediately go over and they're suctioning out whatever he had kind of inhaled. And it was like traumatizing for me. First off, I've never been in the room for someone giving birth, let alone people putting tubes down a little baby's throat. It was like, I haven't had nightmares yet, but they'll come eventually. The whole point is this. I was just waiting for Jude to take his first breath, and all of a sudden then I could take my first breath and be relaxed that okay, everything's going to be okay. There's this rhythm of breathing in and out. And here's a funny thing about breathing. I don't know if I have this later in my sermon, but are you aware that we are supposed to get majority? This is scientific. This isn't just me saying it. We're supposed to get majority of our energy from our breathing. And a lot of times we don't because we're stressed or in a hurry or rushed. And so we don't. We're tired and we rush our breaths and we go fast. And I found something interesting too, and I brought this up in other sermons. The name of God. If you look in any kind of Jewish scripts, even to this day, online I've seen it even, where if a traditional Jew writes out the name of God, it just says the letter G, and then there's a dash where the O is, and then the letter D. They might just even put a G and then a whole dash across. The point is this: they won't even write out the name of God, let alone say the name of God. It's too holy. It's too pure. Now, that is what some scholars say, that's why Jews don't say the name of God. And this has been a tradition for thousands of years. But I would argue something else that some other Jewish scholars argue. Can we put up real quick what the name of God is? I've got it right here. So in the Hebrew letters, the name of God is not how we've always had it, right? Yahweh. It is made up of 4 letters, which are basically Hebrew vowels. And they sound like this: Yod, He, Vah, Hey, and that's where we get Yodve or Yadve or Yahweh as we say it. Now, what's interesting, and this is not an original thought. I mean, I'm taking this from some brilliant people, right? But what is really interesting about the name of God is it that the name of God is too holy to write out or to speak? Or is it that the name of God is not really, in the Hebrew literature, these letters should not work together. They're each vowels. So when I say this, to say Yod, Hey, Va, Hey, they're vowels. They should not work together. And yet the name of God are these 4 put together. When God is asked what his name is, it is Yod, He, Va, Hey. And what's interesting is it that the name of God is too holy to speak? Or is it that the name of God is like the sound of breath? Listen to that. It's like wind. It's like Yod, He, Va, Hey. So is it too holy? Or is it that same breath, that spirit that is breathed into us, is not just a random spirit, but the name of God is breathed into us? And so we could take it even further. And I've said this before. Is the first thing that we do when we are born, is it that we need to take our first breath? Or is the first thing that we need to do is speak the name of God? And when we die, is it that we can no longer take breaths anymore? Or is it that we can no longer speak the name of God? Now, if you've read anything scientific, you know that when people die, it's because they can't breathe anymore. Okay, that is there. But it does seem like there is something wildly poetic and intentional in the Scriptures, that the name of God is the sound of breathing. And like I said before, when I'm anxious, when I'm stressed, when I'm rushed, I don't breathe well. I don't breathe in the rhythm that I'm supposed to be breathing in. And like I said, with my asthma, I already don't breathe in the rhythm I'm supposed to breathe in. And so, in the creation account, right after we are given this breath, there's also a safety precaution put into how we're to conduct our days, right? For 6 days, we're supposed to work. And not just work. It's not like this horrible thing. In the creation account, the work is actually good. It's supposed to bring us joy. It's part of what is being human. We work and we give thanks to God. This is part of what I was talking about with tithing, right? Like we give a portion of our fruits to God and say, thank you for allowing me to work. Thank you for blessing me with work. And so for 6 days, traditionally, we're supposed to work, and on the 7th day, there is a thing called Sabbath. Shabbat is what the Jews call it. And what is interesting about Sabbath, is that, did you know that they're not even allowed to prep the stuff for that day? Like on Fridays, because Saturday is Sabbath for the Jews, on Friday it's called Preparation Day. They don't say TGIF, they say it's Preparation Day. And so we have to cook all the foods and get everything ready. And so on Saturday, on Sabbath, they just warm it up. The whole point is this. God put into the rhythm. We are supposed to breathe and supposed to be in a rhythm with Him and a rhythm with life, not stressed and anxious and hurried, but instead in this just in and out, ebb and flow, moving smoothly. And once a week, just to make sure that we're not getting out of rhythm, that we're not rushed and too anxious, and we got to get these things done, right? God knew that we were going to do that. He knew it. And so He programs into existence one day a week where we are to recenter, calm our breaths, pay attention to our breathing for a moment. What do people that are not aligned with God do? They never do that. They never rest. They're anxious and irritated, and they can't catch their breaths. And so I just think about that. Church, if we do not look different from how other people are interacting with the world and handling stress, what are we doing here? Jesus said this in Mark. I love it, that Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. We work and we work and we work, and then God also knows, Jesus knows that we would even take Sabbath and we'd be like, oh, I got to make sure I obey this. And Jesus reminds us who are part of the church, look, that the Sabbath is not this another thing you've got to get right. Sabbath is a gift, a reminder to refocus, to slow down, to stay calm. And so I bring this first question to you. How has your breathing been lately? If this breathing is this metaphor, this poetic question for how you've been interacting with life and how your pace has been lately, how has your breathing been? Has it been rushed and hurried and shallow breaths, and so you're tired and anxious and angry and all these different things? Or have you just been going with the unforced rhythms of grace? That's what the scriptures say, unforced rhythms of grace, and just been breathing in and out without a care in the world, peace-filled. When we talk about hell, when we talk about demons in possession, when we talk about the devil, in all of these, it's really easy to do a knee-jerk and say, those are evil, those are bad. You know what I think of first when I think of hell or demons or the devil? I think of stress. I think of chaos. I think of destruction. I think of pain. I think of suffering. I don't think of this, generic word of evil or bad. I think of what I see all the time in people who are rushed and hurried and stressed and angry and cannot catch their breath. In Ephesians, we've been reading this the entire series. Last time you're going to hear it and you'll probably want to avoid it. Paul says this, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but it is against rulers, authorities, powers of the dark world, and spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Look, church, we've got to ask if they're against us, right? And that's what we are living in tension with. We've got to answer the question, what are they trying to get us to do? I hope you have 3 things today. I hope you have a Bible. If you don't, we have free ones in the back. I hope you have something to write down, because I believe God is going to reveal something to us today. And the final thing is I pray that you would just have openness, or pray that God would help you to be open, because I guarantee this, and I say this about a bunch of different things, but I think I'm right about this one too. If you're not rushed and anxious right now, I bet something is right around the corner that's going to try to pull you that way. When we talk about hell and demons and the devil, is it that they just want to explode you and implode you? Like we said earlier, people holding their breath, right? They just explode. I think that's how that works. I think that's what hell and the devil and demons want. They don't want to do this big, dramatic showcase. They want to get you rushed. They want you to take shallow breaths. They want you to be hurried, because then we're distracted, and then we can't recenter in on what God is doing right now. I'm going to pray a blessing over the message, and we'll jump in. Heavenly Father, we come to you today acknowledging the fact that we do not have all the answers. And breathing on our own just does not work exactly right. I mean, we always are just tempted and pulled to do more and work more and go further. And God, I pray that you would just recenter us in on this day, this Sunday together. Would you bring your unforced rhythms? Would you bring your way of breathing and existing and seeing life in the world? Because there's so many other people that need to be reminded there's a better way to exist, a better way to breathe, a better way to be. It's in your perfect name, everybody said. Amen. I'm going to have to keep doing this. I just have to. So I have a little bit of a cold. That's why I was wearing a mask, and I'm just going to have to keep drinking water. And listen to my voice, though. This is closer to what if puberty had continued its progress and I didn't have such a high voice. This is closer to what I would have sounded like. So you only get this like once a year, so sorry. Got to live with the nasally. Other than that, you think you got to live with it. I got to hear it all the time. Jesus said this. Jesus did not call out, "Come to me, all who are well-rested and perfect and already got it all together." Jesus actually specifically called out those who were tired, worn down, not just physically but spiritually. And like he said right here, look, come to me, not all who have it all together, but those who are weary, tired, exhausted, drained, and are burdened by that. Feel the weight of life. And so I ask you that, right? This is a progression off of how's your breathing lately? Is your soul lively and life-giving and whole? Do you feel that today? Do you feel the opposite of weary and burdened? Or are you tired? Are you broken? Are you hurting? I want to take this like spirituality wicked series just one step further today. Far too long we have done this in the church, and not just in the church but in the world, right? Bad people go to hell, good people go to heaven, no in between. There it is, right? It's just black and white, just like that. I would argue this. It's not just a thing that is to come, that bad people, if they're bad for too long, they go to that bad place, and good people, if they're good for just enough time, they'll go to the good place, right? I would argue this, and I've seen it, and I think you have too, that people who are not breathing in the right way, not breathing in the rhythms of God, are not going to be in hell. They are already in hell. They are already tired and burdened and broken. We talked about hell being cut off or hidden from God. Man, I came from those kind of people. I don't know if you came from those kind of people. I mean, my mom and dad come here every once in a while, so let's not talk about that. That's what I called my childhood. But there were so many moments I remember growing up, I just thought, everyone is on edge. Everyone is stressed. Everybody is just like, at each other's throats all the time. And I think that is just a little glimpse of what hell is like. And the same goes, I think I have this, for kingdom folk. For us who say that we believe in God, and not just believe in God, but are trying to live into His ideals, into His ways of breathing and existing. It should be the same case for us. If there are people who are hurting and are already in some kind of temporal hell right here, right now, the same should be for us. Man, if we are aligned with God and His way of living, why would only people who are suffering and hurting get to live in that and spread that? We should be doing the opposite. We should be living into the rhythms of God and not just living in it in and of ourselves and insular and stay and keep it in here and protect it from the bad stuff. We should be living in those rhythms of heaven and spreading that every chance we get to. We are called every single moment to breathe in the Spirit of God. And once we breathe that in, we're able to breathe that back out. This is our whole thing. I have it in here somewhere, but I want to make sure I say it. Look, those who are hurt and already in some kind of hell, they want others to hurt too. The same should go for us who are saying that we're healed and restored and aligned with a God who does miraculous things. Do you believe that anymore today, church? The hard part for me is I think we all get set in these structures of I come to church on Sunday, I read a devotional here and there. My small group on Thursday was just talking about this. What is the point of all this? What is the point of everything that we do if we're not actually seeing miraculous change, seeing heaven right before our eyes, seeing stressed, on edge, angry, bitter people transformed into hope-filled, hope-spreading, loving, kind people? My mom is a very nice lady. She does. And my mom's mom is a very nice lady. When they are not nice, it is terrifying. When I was in grade school, the joke that we used to have all the time, this is not a joke, like this is a true story. They used to say that my mom was like a dictator, but because I am the son of the dictator, I'm safe. I remember kids saying that when they come over and my mom would explode. They'd be like, she's terrifying. And I'd say, I know, but it's my mom, so I'm safe. And they'd be scared. And the whole point I'm just trying to say is as I have gotten more and more connected in the church and tried to pursue God as He has pursued me, I have felt these things that I was raised in kind of wash away. And they come back moment to moment when I'm rushed, when I'm stressed, when I'm anxious, when I'm tired. But the same thing goes for my mom. Like, the more that my mom talks about Jesus and talks to Jesus and prays and tries to go into other rhythms other than what she was kind of raised in, oh man, you can just see this whole reversal, this whole shift, this whole switch. I reference my grandma because she's terrifying too. I mean, when my grandma, she's like a, traditional New Yorker from New York City. I mean, just like terrifyingly blunt, hurt your feelings and not bat an eye. I mean, and she's softened over the years as we've been able to talk about Jesus. I guess the point is this: when I'm sick, like I am right now a little bit, we don't breathe very well when we're stressed and anxious. And how are you right now? Do you feel like what you're breathing out is something that's bringing life to other people, bringing life even to just the world right in front of you? Or do you feel like maybe you have not taken the time to pause enough to let that name of God breathe into you so it can restore you and recenter you and rebalance you? You know, one of the things, I'm going to move on here in just a second, but one of the things we also talked about in my small group, is the last time I'll reference my small group. I love my small group. We talked about how it's so hard to find that time to just pause and rest and be still. And I want you to not forget that. We're going to get to that in just a moment. So I used all these different words for spirit. I used neshama, ruah, pneuma. And what's difficult in these examples, kind of like the bad people go to hell, good people go to heaven, is that it's like this dichotomy. I mean, it's very split, right? In the same way, all of those words do not refer to the physical body. Neshama does not refer to your physical body, neither does ruah or pneuma. But there is a word that I think is closer to what we need to grasp, we need to wrap our minds around. And it's a Hebrew word that's used I think it's like 700 times. And it means not just your spirit, but also the physical you. It means everything that you are. And that word is nephesh in the Hebrew. You entirely. The idea of you, the actuality of you, everything that you are is wrapped up in nephesh. In the Old Testament, multiple times when people are, they're starving, they're in the wilderness or something, and they say like, my nephesh has dried up. I think it's in Numbers. They say, my nephesh has dried up. I have nothing to sustain me. In the Psalms, when oh man, what is it? Oh, somebody is being tormented. They say that my nephesh is being hunted, is being haunted, is being possessed. The word nephesh literally means these things. It means breath, it means being, it means people, it means personality, it means life. And there's a couple interesting ones there at the end. Nephesh also means throat or neck. And I want to take this because this is like biblical all throughout. How do you know how somebody is, right? How do you know what they stand for, who they love, what they love? It's what they speak, right? What we speak reveals a great portion of who we are. What we breathe out reveals a great portion of who we are. In Luke, Jesus says this. He says, "For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of." Throughout this whole series, what we've been trying to grasp is, in hell, our entire being is cut off from God. With demons and possessions, where our normal movements and rhythms would be are now transformed into something selfish and evil and bitter. And the same thing goes for the devil, which the name means the one against, right? The opposer. What we breathe out reveals what's gone into us. What the heart is full of is what we speak out. And so I have to ask you that today. What have you been breathing in? Because what you're breathing out, if it's not life-giving and whole and sustaining, I mean, has anybody else been in those seasons where it just seems like no matter what you think or no matter what path you go down, no matter what comes out, it's just always something bitter and frustrating, and it's not pleasing anybody else, it's not pleasing you, it's not pleasing God. I'll be the first to admit, I think I had this in my notes somewhere else and maybe I was avoiding it. I'm in one of those seasons right now, one of those moments. So we went from, I did a quick trip to Missouri for graduate school. We sold our house and closed it and all that stuff. We moved in. I just want to warn everybody, never move. If anybody ever says you have to move or something like that, just do what we used to do. Then we used to go up in trees if they're going to cut down a tree and say, no, don't cut down this tree. Do the same thing with your house. If they say you have to move out, just squat in it, lock the doors, whatever you have to do. I never want to move again. Horrible. I mean, a good experience, but horrible. I mean, it's so exhausting, and I think that's part of why I'm sick, and I spent so long just in this pace of just rushed and hurried, and I never spent time, like we referenced in my small group, I never spent that time. I mean, I skipped my Sabbath. I usually try to do mine on Saturdays. I don't do any work. I don't do any plans, even though I want to. I just don't. I don't do anything except for have these intentional times of prayer, intentional times of reflection, intentional times, as much as I can with a 10-month-old, but we've all got to find those times or else we get into these rushes. And then here's the funny thing too. I'm kind of thankful for being sick right now because I feel horrible. I have not slept in like 48 hours. I don't even know who you guys are right now. That's how tired I am. Sometimes I think that a horrible thing, right? Not a horrible thing, but a frustrating thing is the eventuality of not breathing right, of not being in good rhythms long enough. And sometimes it takes something like the repercussions, right? This is not because I went around, sneezing on my hands and then licking my hands or something. This is because I've run dry without resting. I knew I needed to get on a better pace of breathing, a better pace of life, and I said, forget that. I got to unpack a house. I got to do this. I got to do that. And how many of us do that? We make excuse after excuse after excuse, And before you know it, something happens. This is just a little cold. But man, worse things have happened. Horrible decisions, horrible temptations that you would have never given into. And now, because you're rushed and stressed and tired, you just let anything in. We've got to be careful about what we are breathing in, because it will surely be what we breathe out. I think this is also interesting. Nefesh means throat, means neck. And in the Jewish tradition, for thousands of years to this day, the Jewish people start and some end, and I try to do that too. They start and end each day with a prayer. That prayer is called the Shema. And it's beautiful. Church, I really need you to grasp onto this, right? So this is what I was talking about, where our small group just said, when do you find the time to recenter? Guys and gals, people, I am not trying to say that you need a whole day where you're just creepily praying at your desk or in your home or something weird. Nobody can talk to you or look at you because you're just in this constant state of meditative prayer. That's not what I'm asking, and that's not what God even necessarily asks of you. But every day, the first people who are dedicated to God, the Jewish people, start off their day with this prayer, Shema. And Shema means to hear. That's what the word directly translates to. And it's because it's the first word of the Shema prayer. So let me put that up there real quick, okay? The Shema prayer goes like this. It says, "Hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel. The Lord our God, the Lord is one." There are many gods. There are many different, but our God is one God. This is the one true God. Hear this. Do not mistake it. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. Let's keep that up there just for a second. Now, this is really interesting. When Jesus comes on the scene, a couple thousand years after this is first established, he actually adds in one other thing. He adds in mind. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Think about this. Be cognizant. Be intellectual. Be smart about structuring times in your day where it is undeniable what you are breathing in. Guys and gals, we will never be able to recenter our breathing, realign with God, if we do not have set apart times where nothing else is happening, where nothing else is going on, where nothing else is being breathed in. And the Jewish people are killing it. They're doing it so well above us in this regard. Church, we have got to have not just one day a week, which for some of us in the room, you're like, there's no way. I couldn't even find a day. I couldn't even find a moment. This is not just a thing about convenience or your life will be a little bit better. Church, this is about whether or not we are breathing in rhythm with the Creator or breathing in rhythm with something else. This is not optional. It's not optional. Sabbath is not a suggestion. Sabbath is a command. God says, rest and experience my grace, my truth, my hope. And the same thing goes for that Shema prayer. Hear, listen. It's no coincidence either that the first word of the prayer is not something else. It is, I know you're distracted. I know you're busy. I know you're out of rhythm. Listen, hear, Shema. Every morning they start and they just pray that prayer out loud. That has to take 20 seconds, if that. Usually what I do is if I have some form of that prayer, and then I just pray out, God, here's the things I can thank you for. Here's the things that are really weighing on me that I think are pulling me out of rhythm with you. And like I said, this is me being completely honest with you, church. Last 2 weeks, it has been chaotic. It's been crazy. I'll do it, but it'll be like in the middle of the day, and I'm like, I really don't want to do this. I don't have time for this, and I'll do it. And it's rushed. Even in my prayer life, it's rushed. The last 12 hours where I'm just like, I'm going to die. I have asthma. I can't keep getting sick like this, okay? My asthma's not that big of a deal. I don't know why I keep making a big deal out of my asthma, but the point is this. Look, I keep going down a trajectory of getting sick, short, shallow breaths, stressed, or at some point I can just say enough's enough, and I will hear. I will hear. God is calling me to hear. And when it says, hear, O Israel, that O Israel, that's for you and that's for me. It's for the people of God. Hear those who say they want to be aligned with me, those who say they are aligned with me. Love God. It's not that much to ask for us just to set a few moments aside and tell God that we love Him. And maybe if you don't love Him, to at least go into prayer and say, God, I'd love for you to help me love you. There's so many days when I feel like that. And that's just being honest too. I don't feel this overwhelming sense of, oh, I love God. Oh, I love, no, because I'm stressed, I'm busy, this person canceled, this thing's going wrong. Sometimes it's hard to get back to, no, not sometimes, a lot of times. A lot of times it feels difficult to get back on track. I'd love, Janice, if you wouldn't mind coming back up. I want her to play a little bit. The cool thing is about the Shema prayer, it wasn't just for daily things, but it was for whatever season the people of God went into. When the days were good, pray the Shema prayer. When the people of Israel were in captivity and things were going horribly, pray the Shema prayer. And I'll add one more to this. When life is just doing what life does, it's not necessarily good, it's not necessarily bad, it's just like common, it's just simple. Pray the Shema prayer. The other thing is this too, that they were instructed to speak it during the day to their friends, teach it to their children, constantly recentering in on this. I want to bring this up real quick. Deuteronomy 6. It says this right after the Shema prayer. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them onto your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands, bind them on your foreheads, write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, right? God was not telling the people, take Sharpie and write it on your head. I'm not asking you to do that either. Please don't do that. Or to write it on their hands. The point is this. There should never be a moment, there should never be a space, there should never be a relationship or a conversation where that Shema prayer is not coming through in some way, shape, or form. That people should not hear you when you speak or when you breathe out and say, I feel like this person's trying to love God. I think this person's trying to bring peace. I think this person is trying to be re-centered. Do people say that about you, do you think? I wonder if people say that about me when I breathe, when I speak. Does it seem like I'm somebody who's trying to love God? Do I seem like I'm somebody who's trying to help others to love God? Now, here seems like a weird segue, especially with Janice playing some lovely music right behind it. This is not the only time that writings and markings are supposed to go on hands and foreheads and places. In Revelation, do you know where the mark of the beast goes? On their hands and on their foreheads. Church, here is the truth. If we are not cognizantly making sure that what we're breathing in is the Spirit of God, and what we're breathing out is the Spirit of God, that what we've written on our hearts and on our hands, on our foreheads, on our lives, that's what that text is saying. Write on your lives the trajectory of loving God. If we're not doing that, something else will mark it in its place. It's not a question of if, it's just when or what. Church, I would love for us to be a people as the world does not necessarily get better, but gets crazier and crazier and more divided. It actually inspires me. It gives me joy because I think it'll be that much brighter that the light of hope, the light of Jesus shines, which is such a cliche kind of phrase to say in church, but it's so true. There's so many people whose breaths are rushed and panicked, and they haven't seen light or hope in a long time. And maybe that's you. Maybe it's been a little while since you remembered what unforced rhythms of God are like. I want to encourage you today that today could be that day. Today could be the day that whatever has been written on your hands, your heart, your forehead, whatever's been written on your life, your home, if it's not of God, it could be washed away. It could be removed. It could be cleansed, because that's what Jesus came for. Those of us who are marked with something else. And he said, come to me, those who are weary and tired, burdened and broken, and I'll give you rest. If you're able, I want to invite you to stand as we close today. What is marking you? We've all got to ask that question, and we've got to keep in mind that whatever marks us is not just marking us, but it will mark us and mark those around us. I'm going to pray a prayer of release, a prayer of anointing, of blessing over us today. And if you have something, please, between you and God as I pray, release it over. Let it go. Open your heart. Open your hands. Reveal your forehead where something else maybe is written. Let's pray together. Jesus, I pray and I hope that you feel like you've had room to speak to us today. Forgive us when we've been a stressful people, an edgy people, an angry people, a bitter people. You know what even grieves me, and I know it grieves you, Lord, is how many people have come across our path and needed restoration, needed peace, needed hope, and we were too busy and rushed and barely breathing on our own. There's no way we could share your way of existing with them. God, I pray that today, this Halloween of 2021, wouldn't that be an amazing thing, Lord, if you took people right here, right now, who are rushed, marked with something that is not you, and instead could be transformed and started on a different trajectory of life, a different way of breathing, a different way of existing, a different way of interacting with brothers and sisters, and a different way of interacting with you. God, I pray that if there is any bitterness or anger or rush or anxiety or stress, that we would not just keep holding on to it, not just trying to figure out ways to deal with it, but instead would hand it over to you. Take what is causing us to be weary, take what is burdening us, and instead in its place put peace, God. Put love, put calm, put hope, put what only you can put. God, may the kingdom of heaven not be something that we're just waiting for and we can't wait for it to get here. Might we see that the kingdom of heaven is all around us. The kingdom of heaven is tethered to whatever spirit is within us. And God, I pray that you would have it flourish because of what you're doing in a broken, formerly broken people. And instead, you've restored us to make this world a better place, to restore it back to where it was. Help us to breathe right. It's in your holy name. Everybody said, amen. I pray that anointing over our church today. Bring somebody with you next week who needs to hear that hope. We'll see you soon. Stay safe, stay warm. See ya.